Sarah's hands trembled as she held the menu at the upscale Italian restaurant downtown. The soft glow of candlelight flickered across her face, and for a moment, she looked more nervous than happy. Across from her sat Marcus, a single father she'd met through mutual friends just 3 weeks ago. He'd asked her on this date with such genuine hope in his eyes, and she'd said yes, believing this might be the beginning of something beautiful. But now, staring at the prices on that leather-bound menu, her heart sank into her stomach. Every entree seemed to cost more than she'd budgeted for her entire week of groceries. She felt her throat tighten as she realized the painful truth. This date, this moment she'd been looking forward to, was simply beyond what she could afford. What happened next would change not just her evening, but her entire understanding of human kindness and the power of compassion in a world that often feels cold and transactional. This isn't just a story about a dinner date. It's a story about how one moment of vulnerability and honesty can unlock something extraordinary in the hearts of complete strangers. It's a reminder that kindness still exists in the most unexpected places, and that sometimes the smallest gestures carry the most profound meaning. Before we dive deeper into this incredible story, I want to invite you to join our Kindness Hub family. If you love stories that restore your faith in humanity and remind you of the good in people, please hit that subscribe button. Every subscription helps us bring you more inspiring tales of courage, compassion, and human connection. While you're here, give this video a like if you believe in the power of kindness, and let me know in the comments below what kindness means to you. Now let's get back to Sarah and Marcus and discover what happens when two hearts meet at just the right moment. Marcus had been a single dad for 4 years now. His ex-wife had moved across the country, leaving him as the primary caregiver for his 7-year-old daughter, Emma. Life had been a constant balance of work, school pickups, homework help, and trying to be both mom and dad to a growing little girl. He worked as a middle school teacher, a job he loved deeply, but one that didn't exactly come with generous paychecks. Most nights, he and Emma shared home-cooked meals at their modest kitchen table. Takeout was a rare treat, and fancy restaurants felt like a fantasy reserved for people with more money and less responsibility. But when his sister had insisted he needed to get back out into the world, to remember what it felt like to be more than just a dad, Marcus had reluctantly agreed to try online dating. Weeks of awkward conversations and disappointing meetings had left him pretty discouraged. Then he matched with Sarah. Her profile was honest and warm. She worked as a graphic designer, freelancing from home. In their messages, she'd asked about Emma, seemed genuinely interested in his life, and hadn't judged him for the complications that came with single parenthood. When he finally worked up the courage to ask her to dinner, his hands had shaken almost as much as hers did right now. Sarah, for her part, had been through her own struggles. She'd been saving every penny for the past year, trying to build up her freelance business and create some financial stability. Some months were good, and others were barely scraping by. She'd had to learn to find joy in free activities and budget-friendly dates. When Marcus had suggested the upscale Italian place downtown, she hadn't wanted to seem difficult or high maintenance. She'd said yes, thinking maybe she could get a small appetizer or pasta dish and make it work. But looking at the menu now, even the cheapest items seemed prohibitively expensive. The wine pairings alone cost more than her entire monthly entertainment budget. She felt her cheeks burning with embarrassment. Why hadn't she just told him the truth when he first suggested the restaurant? Why hadn't she said, "I appreciate the offer, but maybe somewhere more casual would be better for me"? Now she was trapped in this moment of awkward silence, and she could feel Marcus waiting for her to say something, probably deciding what she wanted to order. Sarah took a deep breath and made a decision. She would be honest. She'd already learned in life that honesty, while sometimes terrifying, was always better than pretending. She set down the menu and looked directly into Marcus's eyes. "I need to tell you something," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "And I'm scared you're going to think I'm not interested in this date or in you, but that's not it at all. The truth is, I'm looking at these prices, and I'm realizing I genuinely can't afford to eat here tonight. I want to be honest with you instead of ordering something I can't pay for or letting you foot the entire bill when that doesn't feel right to me. I'm sorry for not saying something sooner. This place is beautiful and you're great. but my bank account and reality are telling me we might need to continue this somewhere else." The words hung in the air between them. Sarah braced herself for the response she'd feared. Maybe awkwardness, maybe disappointment, maybe even mild anger that she'd wasted his time. But what she saw in Marcus's face was none of those things. His expression softened, and suddenly she saw something she hadn't expected. Recognition. He knew what it felt like to worry about money. He knew what it felt like to want to impress someone, but to feel the weight of financial constraints. He knew that vulnerability she was expressing because he lived it every day. Marcus reached across the table and gently touched her arm. "Thank you for being honest with me," he said, and he meant it. That took courage. "You know what? I'm glad you said something. Can I be honest too? I stretched my budget for this place because I wanted to impress you, but I was nervous about it too. The truth is, I'm a teacher and a single dad. Money is always tight. I wanted tonight to feel special, but special doesn't have to mean expensive. It means being with someone who gets you, and you just showed me that you do." Sarah felt her anxiety begin to soften. For the first time, they were on equal ground, both vulnerable, both real. Marcus stood up and offered his hand. "Let's get out of here," he said with a genuine smile. "I know a place that has the best pizza in the city, and the atmosphere is warm and genuine. Plus, I know the owner a little bit, and he's a good guy. What do you say?" Sarah took his hand, and together they walked out of that fancy restaurant, leaving behind the weight of unnecessary expectations. They walked through the streets of downtown, and as they went, Marcus told Sarah about the first time he'd had to make tough choices about money. He talked about how Emma had wanted the expensive shoes that all the other kids had, and how he'd taught her about making choices that aligned with your values. Sarah shared her own story about growing up in a household that struggled financially, and how she'd learned to find happiness in simple things. By the time they reached the small pizza place on the corner, they were already laughing about their near disaster at the fancy restaurant. But here's where the story takes a turn that nobody expected. As they walked through the door of the pizzeria, the owner, a man named Giuseppe, looked up from the counter. He was in his 70s with warm eyes and a quick smile that seemed to light up his whole face. He recognized Marcus immediately and came around to greet him warmly. Marcus introduced Sarah, and Giuseppe immediately ushered them to the best table in the restaurant, near the window where the city lights sparkled outside. Giuseppe was a chatty man, and he spent time at their table asking Marcus about Emma, about how school was going, about life. When he turned his attention to Sarah, he asked her about her work, about what brought her to the neighborhood. Sarah found herself opening up to this stranger in a way she usually didn't. There was something about Giuseppe's genuine interest that made you want to share. He disappeared into the kitchen and returned with a beautiful margarita pizza and a bottle of wine on the house. When Sarah and Marcus protested, he simply waved a hand and said, "You two, you have something real. You're honest with each other. That's rare these days. In my 72 years, I've learned that the best meals aren't about fancy decorations or expensive ingredients. They're about sharing a table with people who matter. Tonight, you two matter." As they ate, Sarah couldn't help but notice something remarkable happening around them. Other customers who'd been sitting quietly in the restaurant seemed to become more animated. A couple at a nearby table started laughing more genuinely. A woman eating alone looked up from her phone and smiled. It was as if the authentic connection between Sarah and Marcus, combined with Giuseppe's generosity and warmth, had created a ripple effect of positivity through the entire space. A group of teenagers at a corner table began helping an elderly man next to them cut his food after noticing he was struggling with one arm. A server went above and beyond to accommodate a customer's dietary restrictions without any hint of frustration. A businessman who'd seemed stressed and hurried when he walked in found himself drawn into a conversation with the stranger at the next table and was laughing so hard his shoulders shook. It was as if everyone in the pizzeria had been reminded that kindness matters, that human connection matters, and that we're all in this together. By the end of the evening, Sarah and Marcus were both in tears, but not from sadness. They were tears of joy and gratitude. Giuseppe came by their table one more time before they left, and he took their hands in his. "You too," he said. "You showed me something beautiful tonight. When people are honest about who they are and what they can and can't do, when they don't pretend to be something they're not, that opens a door for real kindness to come through. Real kindness isn't about grand gestures or expensive gifts. It's about seeing someone, truly seeing them, and deciding to help because it's the right thing to do. Because they matter. Because we're all human, and we all need a little help sometimes. Marcus and Sarah left the pizzeria with their hands intertwined, their hearts full. But the story didn't end there. What happened over the following week showed that the ripples of kindness that night continued to spread. Sarah returned to the pizzeria the next week and found the address of a nonprofit that helps families in financial hardship. She reached out to them and offered her graphic design services for free, helping them create marketing materials. Her work was so good that other organizations started contacting her, and her freelance business grew in ways she never expected. Marcus was so moved by Giuseppe's wisdom and generosity that he started a mentorship program for single parents in his community. He used his modest resources to connect parents who were struggling with each other, creating a support network where people could be honest about their challenges without shame. Emma, his daughter, watched her father's example and started a classroom kindness initiative where kids shared stories about when someone had helped them or when they'd helped someone else. The impact in the school was profound, as children began to understand that they had the power to make each other's lives better. Giuseppe's Pizzeria became known throughout the neighborhood, not just for good food, but for the atmosphere of genuine care that permeated it. Local news stations picked up on the story of the restaurant where people went not just to eat, but to remember their humanity. Giuseppe was interviewed and talked about his philosophy of unconditional kindness, of seeing people's true worth beyond their financial status or their productivity. People came from across the city just to sit at his tables and feel seen, valued, and cared for. Sarah and Marcus's relationship continued to blossom. They supported each other through challenges. When Sarah had a slow month with her business, Marcus helped her brainstorm ideas to grow it. When Marcus felt overwhelmed with parenting, Sarah was there to listen and offer support. Emma grew to love Sarah, and Sarah learned what it meant to be part of a blended family. A year later, Marcus proposed at that same pizzeria, and Giuseppe catered their wedding, serving those amazing pizzas to their gathered family and friends. But perhaps most importantly, Sarah and Marcus never forgot the lesson that night had taught them. They understood that kindness isn't about having plenty. It's about seeing someone, truly seeing them in their vulnerability, and deciding that their well-being matters to you. It's about breaking down the barriers that shame and pretense create and stepping into a space of authentic human connection. They understood that the world becomes a more beautiful place when we stop pretending, when we stop competing, and when we start genuinely caring about each other's struggles and victories. The night Sarah told Marcus she couldn't afford the fancy restaurant was the night she accidentally discovered something profound. That honesty creates space for real kindness. And real kindness has the power to transform not just a dinner date, but entire lives and communities. It's the kind of story that doesn't make headlines in big newspapers or go viral on social media for all the wrong reasons. It's a quiet kind of beautiful, the kind that unfolds in small acts of understanding and genuine human care. Today, whenever people ask Sarah and Marcus how they met or what made their relationship work, they tell this story. They tell it because they want others to understand that you don't have to be wealthy, you don't have to have it all figured out, and you don't have to present a perfect version of yourself to deserve love and kindness. They tell it because they've learned that the greatest gift you can give someone is your authenticity, your honesty, and your genuine care for their well-being. And in return, the world gives you kindness in unexpected places and in beautiful forms. This story reminds us that we all have the power to be someone's Giuseppe. We all have the ability to see past someone's struggles and circumstances and recognize their inherent worth and goodness. We all have the capacity to create moments where people feel safe being themselves, where they don't have to pretend or perform or keep up appearances. In a world that often feels transactional and conditional, that gift is revolutionary. So tonight, as you reflect on this story, ask yourself, who in your life needs to feel truly seen and valued? What barriers of shame or pretense are keeping people from being honest with each other? And what small acts of kindness could you perform that might ripple outward and change not just one person's day, but an entire community's understanding of what it means to be human? That's the power of kindness, friends. That's the magic that happens when we decide that people matter more than perfection, when we choose authenticity over pretense, and when we remember that we're all doing the best we can with what we have. And sometimes that's all we need to create something truly beautiful.